Hi guys, welcome on Sharing with People channel. Today, what I would love to discuss before we go even deeper into automated AI generation of content on YouTube is how we can use these generators and what we should be aware before we use them so that we are using them ideally to create something good and not to create something which we shouldn't be really creating. With that said, let's start with a brief description. What is value creation and what is value extraction, and then we will discuss how we can use any content or marketing based on the knowledge that we were able as mankind to collect about how we work as humans through studies of a human brain. But let's start with value creation and value extraction. So what is the difference in between value creation and value extraction? So if we create value, then it simply means that we are generating something that would benefit also many other people. So if we invent something new that increases the efficiency of the work and many people can use it so that they can earn more money, or we as collective mankind can create more, like for example it's true with AI, then we created value. So we are actually increasing the pool available to everybody. On the other hand, value extraction means that we are trying to take as much value as possible without considering the long-term consequences. So if we, for example, cut rainforest to make as much money as possible, or to, for example, plant the seeds of something else there, then we are doing value extraction. And similarly, if we would be using AI to just generate a lot of garbage content, and our only intention would be to extract money from advertisement, then we are not doing value creation, but rather we are doing value extraction. And it's really important to realize the distinction in between these two, then based on your own self-consciousness, and then based on your own honesty, decide what you want to do. With that said, let's move on and let's move on our human brain and what this human brain is strong enough and what is weak against, so that we can use it to increase the reach of our videos. You may know that from the past the human brain was divided into left and right. The latest studies are telling us that it's much more interconnected than we thought, but in the past, this split in between left brain and right brain, when left was seen rather as logical, whereas right brain was seen as creative, intuitive, and so on. In reality, it's much more connected, but this is like the distinction. Now, if we take different point of view, as the brain has been evolving through the ages, then we start with something which is called reptilian brain, which is the oldest part of the human brain, and it's where brainstem is. And the responsibility of this part of the brain is to handle the basic life-sustaining functions, so it's heart beating, breathing, and so on. But it's also responsible, for example, for sexuality, impulses, and so on. And it's the oldest part of the brain. Then the emotional brain or feeling brain is called limbic system. So then we have here limbic system, which is where our emotions are. So thanks to that we can feel, but it's impulsive, it's not self-controlling, and so on. So this is the limbic system where the emotions reside. And then finally the part of the brain which is allowing us to realize ourselves to be simply self-aware. That's the neocortex or thinking brain, which is like the youngest part of the brain. And now, because there is a lot of studies how these parts of the brain interact one with another and what they are weak against, it can be used to simply increase the reach of video or marketing. I mean, it's nothing new. We are using it for marketing strategies for ages. And because the changes inside us humans or brain can easily take thousands of years, then when we learn if something works, again, it's up to us to decide if we want to use it for good or bad. But hopefully the majority of us would decide to use it for making the world a better place. So how it can be used? So if we take into account the reptilian brain, that it's responsible for basic life processes and sexuality. So especially in case of males, if you target marketing using beautiful women and so on, then the males are super susceptible to this, because reptilian brain, it's oldest part of the brain, and there is like a basic sexual drive, so that's why it works, because it's simply super difficult to resist it. So that's one possibility, using reptilian brain. Then if we go into our feeling brain, then of course we humans, or our thinking process is based on like logical and feelings interaction or emotions interaction. So in this case, because every single time from the older part into the younger part is usually much more interconnections. In this case, even in case of feeling brain, there is much more connections from feeling brain, which is limbic system, into neocortex, which is our thinking system or system where the logic resides. And almost everything usually begins as emotion. So you feel good about something and then you do it. And then when this good feeling gets into your thinking brain, then you just, through language, because only thinking brain is able to comprehend language, then you simply create some rational explanation why is it so, why you feel. But to really understand why you feel how you feel, the feeling brain is not able to tell you. It's just that we create some narration, some story, but it may or may not be true. So we have here inside limbic system feelings, reaction to threats, and now if we create, for example, pictures of children, toddlers, small cute animals, then these work like extremely well, because in case of children, toddlers, they are cute, it triggers our feeling of protection, and in case of small animals, then it usually activates inside limbic system so-called cute aggression or cute pinch syndrome, which means that simultaneously two feelings and very strong feelings are activated. So it activates the feeling of protection, and simultaneously it activates the feeling of they are so cute and I want to protect them. And because these two feelings very easily overwhelm the brain, it's very difficult to prevent it from taking control over humans, which then means they would be watching these videos for a longer period of time. And then if you want to, because normally the humans go through the day on autopilot, so if you want to like get them out of the autopilot, if you create something which is unexpected, like for example you create a reptilian toddlers or something like that, then it's so unexpected that it will simply forcefully bring people out of the autopilot and they would start paying attention. But again, it's misusing how the human brain works, and it's also super important to be aware of it, because if we are aware, then we also know why it works, and if we know why it works, and we see some videos like that, then we know that this is something that normally works on us, and we can decide if we want to follow through or if we want to skip it. And then, of course, which is misused a lot by social media and also marketing in general, is dopamine spikes. So you have to create something which is novel, because in case of dopamine, at least based on the latest studies, it works in a way that we have some baseline level of dopamine, and the way how we feel something as super interesting or pleasurable is the amount of change. And the amount of change is connected with how novel or disrupting these things are. And then, as I mentioned, if you create something unexpected, it will create a surprise, it will break the humans or people from autopilot, and it will increase the click rate or the watch rate. And then the last thing that I want to mention in case of feeling brain is that negative things, thanks to amygdala, are usually perceived 1.7 times more stronger than the positive ones. That's also the reason when you see the negative topics and so on, then it's usually bringing your attention to them, because it was much more important to pay attention to negative or threatening things, which simply made sure that we will survive, than to positive ones. And then in case of thinking brain, the thinking brain itself is usually not really targeted. Much more are targeted reptilian brain and feeling brain, because you can sneak things into them and they usually comply. In case of thinking brain, unless you do, for example, mindfulness, meditation, or try to systematically resist some temptations, then your thinking brain is usually not growing stronger. And if it's not growing stronger, then for your thinking brain or neocortex, it's much more difficult to actually suppress the impulses from reptilian brain or feeling brain. And you may have also noticed that we are not really good at resisting temptations for a long time, so it's usually better to hide the thing which is tempting us. You can imagine, for example, that you are trying not to eat the chocolate, and if you just put the chocolate to be visible for you all the day, then it's usually just a matter of time that one day you simply arrive really exhausted from your work, and that's exactly when the thinking brain and will fail, and we will end just following our limbic system, which is our feeling brain. Now, last topic that I want to cover here is that in case of current society and why people prefer the entertainment, is that currently as the majority of people simply work throughout the work days, then they have just 2 days of vacation. There is a reasoning behind, because after working 5 days, you are usually tired, and if you are tired, then it's much more difficult to resist temptations, and it's also increasing the spending during the just 2 days, because you have just 2 days to get back your free time. So there is a reasoning behind, and that's also the reason why the majority of people who are going into work, and then they have to handle all these responsibilities connected with family and so on, so their will or neocortex is really exhausted, and that's why reptilian and limbic system gets usually free rein, and that's why it's so easy to get these people to watch some entertainment, because they are already exhausted, they want to be entertained, and because their willpower is depleted to actually suppress these impulses, then it works. I mean, the entertainment in general works the best, or creating these unsettling videos and so on. And in case, unfortunately, of AI, you can generate as many as you want to. But this is really important to understand, that given that our brain would need another, for example, 1,000 years to evolve and change, these are simply things which are for now set to stone and they can be misused against us. So it's necessary to learn about them. So if we see it happening, then we at least understand why it's happening, and we would also understand what to do against it. And then, which we were covering inside the sharing with people channel, there are around 135 mind biases, which is usually some predictable pattern how human brain simply follows through. So for example, if we take some example, Zeigarnik effect. Zeigarnik effect is a process when people usually remember unfinished things, because if something is unfinished, the people still think about it. But what was observed immediately when the task is finished, or it was just sufficient to write down the task into Note, because from brain point of view it's implemented, okay, so it's stored inside the notebook, so I can pick it up anytime, and it was just this was sufficient for brain to stop trying to find some solution to the problem. Zeigarnik effect, and there is 134 more that can be misused against us. So with that said, now we know that with generating AI content we can do harm, and hopefully we would take it into mind to rather do good with the power of AI. And that's all that I wanted to share with you during this video, and in next we will start going really deep into the flows inside NA10. And now I'm left only with the last one point, and that's to wish you as good as possible rest of the day. So see ya!